Hi everyone, I'm KaL, and today we're doing a kind of different slightly thing. Bob has recorded for us a video of Sonic CD, and we're gonna talk about Sonic CD and I guess associated games. So there's no interaction, I guess, on our part at the moment. And joining me today is Bob, who recorded the video, so he knows what's gonna happen mostly. And we've also got our special guest, Muteki, who does some of the music for GC9x, and he's also basically, I don't know, like top 10 Sonic experts that aren't Wikipedia editors for Sonic Wiki.
I mean, I try. I've got that. I've got a long-running series because I update it so slowly, where I'm analyzing level by level each stage in the original Sonic 1.
One thing I want to point out.
Hopefully, I'll eventually move on to.
I want to make this very clear. I'm using American soundtrack.
Yeah, because he's a filthy jingoist.
Hey, they both have good soundtracks. I just have a bit of a nostalgia preference for the U.S. soundtrack.
That's fair. That's fair. I do prefer the Japanese one, but mainly because it's more consistent throughout.
So, Sonic CD was my very first Sonic game. I forget when I played. I think it was about 6, so that'd be 98. I played the PC version.
PC version?
Windows 95 version. And I really liked it.
That was my first access to this game, too. I didn't have a Sega CD as a kid.
And when you're 6, this intro is the coolest thing in the world. It still kind of is.
It's a fun song, too.
This was animated by
the only time,
I believe, and it looks great.
That Sonic has, like, what I would say is, like, a super canon representation of Sonic as a classic original-style Sonic. Like, there's no gimmick, he's not talking, he's not beating Robotnik up, or Robotnik's not making weird comments about pingers or whatever.
He's just going fast.
He's not so evil, he's having an orgasm over it.
Yeah, like, I mean, Sonic moves really nicely. I really like Sonic's just general animation here. Obviously, Sonic Boom is an absolute classic, and it encapsulates Sonic as a, franchise, really. Keep on going faster.
Fun fact, the pace of this sequence matches up perfectly to U2's song Desire from the album Rattle and Hum.
I did not know
It's
that.
uncanny.
Is that to do with the, like, the was it RPMs?
Beats per minute, I think.
Yes,
I think that was sort of the idea, is to sort of match up the animation to the sequence with, like, the game's theme song.
The thing I just did there...
So both Sonic Boom and the original Sonic game do that.
That was a super peel out, a move that's in very few of the games, and it's not incredibly useful, but it sure looks cool.
It's probably the best way to quickly gain speed in this game, but it leaves you very vulnerable to hits. The spin dash exists in this game as well. It was really first showed up in Sonic 2, but here it takes forever to load up, and if you cut it out quickly, you just wind up in one space.
Right.
Here you can partly launch up a super peel out and gain still a pretty decent speed boost, especially if you're going somewhere.
Now you'll see
and the first time warp.
Right. Now the thing about this game, you haven't played it before, is that you can go in the future or past of every stage.
A little bit like Echo the Dolphin 2, The Tides of Time, but it's sort of a matter of every single stage rather than just as like a game-wide gimmick.
And to get the best ending, or one way of getting the best ending, you need to go in the past of every Act 1 and Act 2 and find a certain... I think it's a robot generator, and then you gotta destroy it.
Yeah, that's sort of the idea. To get into the past, what you do is you hit the little signpost that says past, and then go really fast for, like, depending on which version of the game you're playing, either 3 to 5 seconds. There's usually 1 or 2 places in every act where it's extremely easy, like right there. These sort of facing springs will launch you up and give you a huge speed boost that makes it easy to... generally, yeah, it depends on where you are, but they tend to put them in places that are near where, like, that robot generator is. Or in here, like, you can just hit that past sign, go through the little forced warp, and you're almost certainly going to end up in here. Sorry.
The thing is, though, you have to be very careful, because,
yeah.
If you end up stopping when you're about to warp, you'll lose it. So you need to be sure you have a good flat space to run for a while, and not hit a wall or something.
Yeah, if you can see like two springs that are pointing towards each other, that's probably the best place to be, because you can just hit the spring and let go of the controls and you'll eventually win.
I guess we should mention that the music, I believe, is the same in the past for both versions, if I remember correctly.
Right, it's PCM,
Yeah, that's right.
not Redbook.
Yeah, sort of like the way the Super Nintendo generates audio from like a set of samples sequenced. The CD Redbook audio is extremely easy to change, and if you've got a copy of the game, you can burn yourself a new disc where, if what you want to do is replace all of the game soundtrack with segments of Rush songs, you could theoretically do that without too much trouble, as long as you got some decent CD authoring.
On the subject of special stages, I'll tell you this right now, I will not get all the time stones, because these get really hard.
I really wanted Bob to play them all, but he...
They are very, very difficult indeed. Especially if you're not like quite aware of how they work, because it's so easy. Like the little UFOs that you have to hit are like pixel thin.
Eventually, they just get incredibly good just dodging right out of the way of you in later stages.
Well, they follow a fixed path.
Yeah, that too.
It's just a very erratic.
Yeah, there's like every single stage seems to have like a very specific sequence that you have to hit almost completely precisely to easily get each time stone. There are ways to beat each level really quickly, but especially as it goes on, the sort of patterns become less and less clear, and the layouts become, less forgiving towards you too, where UFOs spend all their time flying over the water, and if you land in the water, that takes 10 seconds off of your time in the stage. So it's really easy to end up losing.
I will say the special stages are a lot better on this particular remaster, though, because the frame rate on the special stages is a lot smoother.
Yeah, it's like the PC version, or not the PC version, the Sega CD version, and then I guess also the original Windows 95 PC port. Both have it running at close to like 15 or 20 frames per second, like the actual stage scrolling. It doesn't look bad, but it definitely looks choppy, especially compared to the way the background scrolls.
I guess it's worth mentioning that the version of the game that we're playing, because I don't think we've mentioned that yet. We're playing the what is it,
2011, I think?
Well, 11? I was gonna say 11, but I thought that sounds...
2011, I think, yeah.
2011 PC re-release using Taxman code or something?
Yeah, the Retrosonic engine, I believe it's called.
Yeah.
And it's not a port, it's like a complete remake of the game using his engine, which allows for stuff like widescreen support and such.
This is a game that really lends itself well to widescreen, because there aren't very many places where you're walled off in a very small region of space, the way a lot of the other Sonic games do. So that this one was sort of the first widescreen port was great. Also because emulating the Sega CD is hard, this was a great one to use a sort of custom engine to get playing, rather than try to do all of the work necessary to emulate it. And it wouldn't run on as much stuff either.
So, I mean, what we just saw just before, the rings were in the walls.
Right.
So,
I believe that in the past and the future, the layout would change enough that you'd be able to get those rings.
Yes.
Yeah, some of the rings are definitely available. There are some places where rings are still stuck in walls that are just never accessible. I'm pretty sure there's a part of Collision Chaos where it looks like they shouldn't be in the wall, but they are, and that's just where they are.
I believe at this point I was trying to show off the future and having an issue there, because, like I said, you have to be very certain you know your path.
Yeah, this is actually this is a surprisingly difficult level to time warp through.
I do not get a
Once
good
again.
picture on this playthrough, but I have recorded what it looks like. I can show that off later.
It's definitely cool. I love the way the good futures work in this game.
Because
they are just stunning to look at.
So because there is there's the past, there's the present, there's good future and bad future. And I believe the music is different between all of them?
Yes. Yes, and except for the two versions, whether you're playing the U.S. overseas or the version that showed up in Europe and Japan with its original soundtrack, like there are 7 different songs for a level potentially.
Which is insane.
I was so close to the past there, and I messed up.
Yeah,
if you just generator right there.
Yeah, if you hadn't hit the controls at the end there, you would have definitely been okay, because you can just keep rolling back to hit the spring. That's the easiest way to transform in a level like Collision Chaos.
Oh, and here's the bad future. This is what happens if you don't find the generators.
I always like the bad futures as well, because they have this, I guess they kind of remind me of Sat AM, I guess. Like, they have a very robotized feel.
Yes. Yeah, very, very sort of gross and oppressive feeling. While still remaining, I want to thank the guys at Zone Zero for pointing this out, that they still have like a lot of well thought out color use. It's not all drab and gray. In fact, I think that's one of the reasons why it feels more oppressive to me, is that it's both grimy and somewhat vibrant. So it's not like, oh, this is boring. No, it's really sort of in your face.
Yeah, they didn't go with like
how,
the apocalypse
creepy
is brown. They went with.
Yeah.
I guess it's similar to maybe Terminator, the way the future in that works, where it's mostly just oppressive, but then they do bright like Terminator eyes and like shards of really bright color and fire and stuff, just to pop in the scene.
And there's a lot of contrast going on here too. Like it's specifically like purple and orange, which Sonic tends to use the intermediate colors a lot because they stand out well against Sonic. He doesn't like blend into the background or foreground because he's mostly blues and reds, and then the rings and things like that are all yellow. So they use a lot of these intermediate colors for the level layouts, and it looks really nice that way. But as you can see, they're used very unnatural intermediate colors for the grass and for the ground there. So it has this very clearly polluted wrongness to it that's hard to.
It's kind of something they never really went back to, unfortunately, as neat as it looks.
Yeah, I'm surprised they've never considered doing another time warp mechanic like this.
Did they not? Or were they planning to roll one out at some point? I know that Sonic 2, wasn't that going to originally also have a time mechanic, and they scrapped it at some point?
They never really explained that. It was very vague.
I think it's more that this game was sort of built from those ideas and then sort of split off into its own thing. Maybe because Sega was saying, okay, not everyone on this development team is getting along. We can have some of you guys work over in the US on this one game, whereas we want the rest of you guys to, put out something for the Sega CD. Maybe it'll just be a port of Sonic 1, or maybe it'll be something new, but you guys figure it out. This is what they ended up coming up with.
It's interesting.
So
this game always felt more like kind of like a reimagining of the original Sonic more than a sequel.
There are a lot of places in the game that you can point to and say, this really sort of feels like it was born directly out of modifying ideas from Sonic 1 in a way that's not quite as true in the later games.
I'd like to talk about the bosses for a minute.
Sonic 2 is earlier, but
People complain about the boss and they say they're too easy. That's true, but they're unique, and I appreciate that.
Well, I don't understand complaining about the bosses, because most of the Sonic 1 bosses are, once you understand how to beat them, they're easy.
Well,
Sonic was never really about the bosses.
The bosses in this game are a lot more varied, I'd say, in the way they work. It's not just him and his
would have technically beaten Sonic 2 to using Sonic as a pinball, as we'll get to later, but because this game was scheduled to come out before and got delayed.
Yeah, probably because of the whole we're putting this on Sega CD thing, which the development, I don't know if I want to call it troubled exactly, but it probably wasn't like super straightforward.
And then
we're coming right to Collision Chaos, which is, I'm sorry, she's clearly Princess Sally. Hey, that's what the manual says. Are you going to say the manual lies?
I definitely am going to say the manual lies.
The old hints books called her Princess Sally, but I actually remember my copy of the Windows 95 version referring to her as the precious Amy being kidnapped.
The precious Amy. Well, that's the first and last time Amy will be referred to as Precious in the Sonic franchise.
I just want to say, I really
Well,
love this.
maybe in a sort of southern patronizing, bless her heart kind of way.
I really love this track, by the way. It's one of my favorite Bad Future tracks in the game.
Oh, yeah. It was, like, these tracks here for Collision Chaos and Metallic Madness were apparently done by members of the old Santana backing band. So you got a couple nice percussionists and bass musicians who are extremely good at their craft.
Sega did like to do that a bit. They had a lot of I guess I really don't want to offend like actual like the people that did the music for games of this time period, but you know they got a lot of actual musicians in terms of like that was
professional,
one of Sega's things. Yeah.
Right, especially with the Sega CD stuff. It's like, you know, we can have full-level CD audio in our games. Let's hire, you know, a bunch of talented instrumentalists we might be able to find and see if they'll record for us.
And they did get some, frequently. I mean, it certainly helped give the Sega CD especially its own musical sort of feel. I guess it's kind of very dated in a lot of ways, because obviously they dug up people who were, like, kind of semi-big in the, like, early 90s, but, it still has, like, it's very, like, interesting depth. I
mean, Sega was never really the sort of company to shy away from their celebrity endorsements, especially for things like their sports titles with, like, Joe Montana football. Was Tommy Lasorda baseball, was that a Sega Sports thing, too?
I would...
And then there's the other stuff.
It kind of seemed like they quit the celebrity thing by the time the Sega CD was a thing, though, so...
well, I mean... I wouldn't say so. I mean, they had like Criss Cross and stuff on the Sega CD.
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Oh, yes.
Everyone want to play Criss Cross. Yeah.
And there was stuff like Wirehead that really sort of proudly displayed, not for nothing, it's got some impressive special effects, but Wirehead on the Sega CD opening up with the MGM Studios logo.
Where's Wirehead HD, Sega?
You know, 16 color. Yeah, seriously, that is a game I genuinely really want to see remade.
If we can get Dragon Slayer poured to everything in existence, why not Wirehead?
Yeah, not only is it a lot more fun game, it's also, it never moved past the Sega CD. And that's a real shame, because like with something like Dragon Slayer, you can say, oh yeah, the Laserdisc version or something. Really nice video on there. But that's like my big problem with the Sega CD, is that you really couldn't have more than 15 colors for video, so everything looked really bad.
Okay.
And then they tried so hard to push that angle for their marketing.
I think I'm about to do something pretty pro up ahead if I...
Oh, we gotta focus on your proness. I mean, we are here to watch this game.
Yeah.
I think I do something kind of cool here.
I mean, while we watch that, we can also look at the backgrounds, because there's a lot more sort of movement and motion than even the regular Sonic games in this one, I believe.
And there's a lot of high detail, too. Things look really close up, more than they tend to do in Sonic 1 or 2.
Yeah, there we go. See, that's what Sonic's about, doing stuff like that.
Yeah, those half pipes definitely feel like they were taken straight out of Spring Yard Zone from the original Sonic 1.
Actually,
Acts 2 and 3 had several of them, like, going all throughout the level.
That kind of brings up a point I wanted to make real quick. This is pretty clearly based on a Spring Yard Zone. This game does not have a Marble Zone equivalent, though. Apparently there were plans for it, though.
Yeah, not like a Ruin level. I think
they kind of put Marble Zone and Labyrinth Zone together.
See, I was going to say, like, if I had to pick one level that acts most like Marble Zone from Sonic 1, it's probably Wacky Workbench, but we can get to that later.
Yeah.
I'll sort of explain why I say that later.
That projector of Metal Sonic, I don't know what it does. It doesn't do anything useful as far as I can tell if you destroy it.
It just, yeah, the only thing it does is it causes all of the furry little animal creatures to start showing up.
I do like
which
that
is sort
it's
of
just
cool,
like,
but not super significant.
I love that it's just Metal Sonic being an asshole. Like, that's the machine. It's not even like a real Metal Sonic. It's just like a projection of Metal Sonic being an asshole. Like Robotnik built this thing and put it there. Like, here, look, this is what's gonna happen in the future, you assholes.
Yeah, the funny thing is, Metal Sonic really does not make very many appearances in this game past those projections.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. I think, was Metal Sonic's popularity partially driven by the OVA? Because he's a main character in the OVA.
Well, in Japan possibly, but we didn't get that in the US until like Sonic Adventure came out.
That was like
I remember
99,
seeing
I
the
think,
advertisements for it in '99. Yeah,
I
like,
had that movie. I
EGM
used to watch all the
had a bunch
time.
of them.
The OVA,
I
you'd
did
say.
too. Like back when I was in like 6th grade, I was sick with like the flu for a week, and I did nothing but sit around and watch my old VHS copy of it. You might know everything I'm going to do, but that's not going to stop me, because I know everything you're going to do. Strange, isn't it?
So we're now, alright, I guess, I don't know if we mentioned this, but if you don't get a good future, you always play a bad future in the boss level. I don't know.
Yeah, you gotta get... Yeah, you have to destroy the machine generator thingies in both Acts 1 and 2 in order to get to this point.
And
Here's another
curiously,
cool boss.
you still fight a boss even though you saved the future, so I'm not really sure where they were going with that.
I could never beat this guy as a kid. Between the haunting boss music and the terrifying game over sounds, the creepy laughter.
I love
God,
the boss music in this game. It's so inappropriate in every way.
Yeah.
I want to point out that
I like the sort of
Bob
funky
did an
tunes
amazing
in the
job
Japanese version.
there.
Yeah. Oh man.
Because you can get this boss can just send you over and over through like the pinball machine loop if you don't do it right.
Yeah. It's really hard to line up a couple of those aims, especially in this version. In the older versions of the game, you kind of get stopped up between the bumpers and like the edge of the ground because of the way the collision checking works. But here, that just doesn't happen.
So Bob just rushed through it, but I really love the opening to Tidal Tempest. Like, I think it's one of the...
Oh yeah, those...
Yeah.
The volcanoes erupting is such a... It looks so cool. I kind of wish they had more of that background, but especially due to the way Act 2 works, because it kind of loops infinitely, they couldn't really feasibly do that.
Yeah, but I love it. 'Cause
actually, Act 3 does too.
You feel
yeah,
like you're going
so nice.
underground, and then you are underground.
Yeah.
Sonic 3 might do that, but I don't think any of the other 2D Sonics did that, where you kind of transition.
Yeah, the closest I can think of with Sonic 2 is Hilltop Zone, but they didn't really change the background so much as they just got rid of it so that they could add the effect of the scrolling ground underneath.
Yes.
The lava changes. So that's why you don't get to see the background in those areas.
Oh, I just love
this
the
is
metal.
a really good, one of my favorite bad futures, I'd say.
Oh man, yeah. Like, it really plays up the polluted and decaying angles so hard. And the music is maybe even more haunting than the boss music I was just talking.
Well, this music is
a game...
haunting. It's not as like directly menacing. It's a lot more.
Right.
This whole area feels like it could have been from Echo, actually. Including the music.
Yeah.
Like, you could have been Echo the Dolphin.
It helps that it's underwater.
Yeah, that's what I mean, because you're underwater, everything's polluted, the music is downplaying as shit. It's like, it's just a solid.
Yeah, there's kind of an ASMR thing going on in the background of the music with the lady voice sort of being kind of breathy in your...
Yeah. Which I guess you really only get with headphones, though. It'd be a bit harder to get with, like, TV speakers circa 93.
Yeah. Well, you could certainly, if you had at least the original Genesis models, you could totally plug in a pair of headphones to listen to it that way.
Yeah, which would have been best for this sort of game, because it has got a phenomenal soundtrack, regardless of whether you played the Japanese or American version. I do prefer the Japanese one specifically because it is, as you said, more consistent. Like, I think there's some, like, kind of crappy or really dated tracks in the American release.
I think they both have their own good and bad songs.
Really, my only problem with the port that you're playing is you can't set music per level. Because if you could, it would be
I would appreciate that.
It would be great if you could just, like, go into the start menu at any time and switch playing the tracks. Like, that's one of two things about this release that really bother me. The other one being that if you use the original Sonic CD spin dash controls, the speed shoes, at least the last time I played this, don't work correctly.
Right,
Because,
so there's some weird little
yeah.
bug.
Yeah, it's the aerial speed cap. It's when you've got the speed shoes, it's not supposed to be engaged, but it still happens.
Right.
And
so,
this is where I start getting really terrible special stages.
Well, to be fair, this is where the special stages start getting really terrible to beat. It's.
I mean, you had the right idea. You have to sort of go around. Is that counterclockwise? No, that's just clockwise. Yeah.
You'll notice they veer away
everything.
from you right at the last second.
Right.
It's a coincidence, but it's very frustrating.
If you miss the cycles on these things, it is agonizing. Like this is sort of like missed Cycle City right here.
So what I will
and that,
I just want to say, because I know looking at these special stages, they don't look hard. I want to just say they're really hard. Like they look easy, but they're just diabolical.
Yeah, the UFOs look like they should have some depth to them for when it comes to collision detection, but that's not true at all. It's a very narrow range that you have to actually hit them.
And Sonic does feel a bit like a tank. He's very blocky to move around.
Right, you're basically moving straight forward all the time, so you can only turn left and right. If you hold down, you can slow down a little bit, and I think I saw Bob doing that a couple of times in that stage, but it is really sort of hard to navigate even then, especially with the time limit. Your ass all the time. And the fact that those UFOs will just sort of dart unpredictably. Their patterns by the back of your hand.
And you don't get a Supersonic in this game, because it's a lineage from Sonic 1, not connected to Sonic 2.
Supposedly they were going to have an extra final boss you got all the time stones for this release, but Sega Japan said no, apparently. I think there's a picture of it.
Yeah, they didn't want to mess around with it too much. Yeah, the way it looked, it sort of reminded me a little bit of the Sega CD boss that was in... I think it was a Sega CD exclusive boss in... what was it called? Pugsy.
Pugsy.
Because it was like this giant... Yeah, it was a giant Robotnik robot that was sort of baked into the background, and you had to keep going through time warps to do damage to it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Sort of a fun idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can certainly see why they nixed it if they didn't think it was working or was sort of too far off from the original.
Yeah, I guess I can understand that, because at that point you're kind of veering off from it being just a remaster. Yeah, I'm always... Like I said, I never find the right place to pick up speed.
I do feel like that... I know they try and give you concessions and all this to build up that speed, but it definitely, I would say, is one of the more confusing and frustrating elements of this game, is that so often you feel like you're just about to time warp, and then you hit an object, and it's like, come on!
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is
it's
a game
very
where
trollish.
You really have to explore more than any other Sonic game. That especially applies when you're trying to get speed for time warps.
And there it is.
Yeah, if you're trying to
the
get the good feature,
background.
you have
to. This is a beautiful special stage.
God, yeah.
I mean, they've even got parallax on some of those like things that they feel like different elements like this. I mean, these special stages are satanic, but they are almost all universally absolutely gorgeous in terms of sprite work.
Probably like about half of them feel like they seem like aesthetically connected to some of the other stages in a way. This one certainly, for example, looks like Palm Tree Panic does with its color choices and, vast waterfalls. Sort of an outgrowth of the whole idea of like the Green Hill Zone aesthetic.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
you've got
certainly
the
very
clouds
different, and even then, yeah, the rocks feel more realistic than anything you'd see in a normal Sonic level, which sort of makes it weird.
I mean, the rocks feel like they're from a SNES game because of the sort of detailing.
I believe there's actually a ROM hack that uses this as a background in one of the zones, and it looked pretty good there.
I believe it, yeah. I think I've seen it. So that one there, yeah, that one only shows up when you got like 15 or 20 seconds or whatever to go, and it gives you about like 30. So
and it doesn't give...
as long as you can hit that one with the red lines, the UFO, you can stay in these stages theoretically forever.
It doesn't count.
I would not advise it.
Doesn't count on your total though, because screw you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to slow down there and it didn't work.
Yeah, the grass is really sort of hard to account for, and then with the UFO darting around, that's the thing that makes it so hard. You can't jump in place. If you could somehow jump in place, then these would not be difficult at all. But you're basically always forced to jump forward. So if you miss the trajectory even slightly, you're screwed because of the way the sort of cycles and momentum of the UFOs work. And this boss especially, like this whole level, it's really easy to see the influence of Labyrinth Zone on it. Because it's a very similar level of background detail, very comparable structures, like where Act 2 starts off with the same sort of infinite falling loop that Act 3 of Labyrinth did in Sonic 1. And then there's this boss, which, you know, Sonic 1's Labyrinth boss was probably the most obvious progenitor to these style of boss fights with their more elaborate mechanics and not necessarily just get 8 hits on Robotnik fast sort of.
And I appreciate when they vary things up in this game, because
This is a very experimental game, despite the fact that it carries so many ideas from Sonic 1, which is probably a good thing. If they were both trying to innovate,
has 2 parts, which is definitely uncommon for a Sonic game.
Yep. The funny thing is, you only actually need, once you get to this point, a single hit on the actual craft to defeat him. So if you can time your jumps correctly, and you nearly had it there, you can totally beat him, you know, without having to destroy most of these bubbles.
a lot of the bosses seem like they have a really quick way to just instantly kill them, which is interesting.
Yeah, for me, like, the easiest thing to do on that first boss, for example, is to take the upper route through the level and
Get the invincibility and then run till you're behind him and just jump a lot.
Yep, exactly.
I actually show that off later.
Oh, okay. Oh, do you do some time attack stuff in here?
I play as Tails a bit to show off the good future and some other things I didn't show.
Oh, okay, I see.
Because Tails is actually a playable character in this remaster.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it fits the gameplay really well because the levels are extremely vertically built because they're just so big.
On the subject of vertically built, because I think we're going to see it this stage. The game reflects the ceiling?
I think you were thinking of Collision Chaos, actually, that does that.
Okay, it's the only one that does that?
I don't think that shows up in here, too. It might. This is the level I tend to forget about the most.
It does
simply
go by
because
very
it's not really... Yeah, it's also the one that's least like any sort of precedent in Sonic 1, I think.
This level is certainly just, like, stuff, I guess. Like, it's just really big and open.
Yeah. It feels like it's sort of the crossroads between the first half of the game's mostly natural-looking surroundings and the second half, which is more mechanical. One of the sort of things I like about a lot of Sonic games is that they tend to do that. At least the ones that I think have a more thoughtful level tend to put all of the naturalistic levels near the start. Yeah, this one is like the hardest place to transform. You want to do it around here because that's where the Badnik generator thing for the good future is, but it's just so difficult. To the point where even I struggle to say that there's a reliable method, especially in this version. Because a few methods that should be working don't. Like there's a place where you can shoot kind of like forward.
Oh, did you see that?
They knew you were going to do that. Such a troll. They know exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
But you get to see this awesome background, though. Like, you do get to see that.
Man.
Like, you don't usually get to see future cityscape sort of things, from bad futures in Sonic games. You just never see them, so... to see that is very cool.
Yeah, the sky looks like it's on fire. Jesus.
I think part of the problem with this stage is that the, at least for the American soundtrack, I don't know about the, Japanese one, the American, like, basic soundtrack is really forgettable. Like, the standard time, not future, not past.
Oh yeah, the present.
Yeah, present is a bit forgettable.
And the past and future, I feel, don't really fit with the present very well at all. They feel like they were taken from sort of two different musical ideas, which is weird because the game by that point had been finalized and released in other zones. So
Yeah.
I'm surprised they didn't get something that was like a little bit more coherent among each time zone. Most of the rest of the game tends to be like that.
Now, one thing that I just saw here, the ramps, they have some more degrees of difference to them, like the curves of the ramps.
Yeah, the curves are, they curve up and they curve down. They're really sharp hills. Nowhere in Sonic 1 can I think of where it's really that much of a sharp changing gradient.
I
Yes,
think we
this-
saw some of that
especially
in
with
Tidal
the-
Tempest too.
This one doesn't have the ceiling as the floor, but some of the levels do, which is very strange.
Yeah, there's a very surrealistic bend going throughout like every single level design. Even if it looks like Sonic 1, it feels like Sonic 1 mashed up almost to the point of being beyond recognition.
Also, this is purely art, but I find that this game, probably along with Chaotix, has the most abstract sort of like tiling. Like, you got these like triangle walls,
Yeah.
and I have no idea where that came from conceptually.
Yeah, outside of the basic idea of we kind of want to keep following up the idea we had in Green Hills, so we're going to make everything geometric. It's really hard to say that, but the art design in this game is superb. In fact, the designer for the game, Naoto Oshima, was the sort of original graphic designer for Sonic, and I think did a lot of the level art for the first game. So
I'd say it
he's
shows.
like the only remaining original staff, and yeah, the art direction in this game is just top notch.
Like I said, it's very much a continuation of Sonic 1.
It interests me that because a lot of people, I think, for a long time felt this was kind of like the trashy bastard Sonic game because it didn't really fit anyone's like nostalgia timeline. Because obviously, as both of you said, neither of you played it on the Sega CD because you didn't have one. So for a lot of people, they didn't play this one. So it was either this big mystery game or it was some trashy like stupid Sega CD game because Sega CD games are trash. Even though right there in the background is Snatcher, so I mean, that's I guess,
Oh shit, yeah.
that's Akira.
You're right. The background is Snatcher. I never
I love
really
the
thought about that
parallax
before,
on,
but that's
whatever those are
oh
supposed to be in
yeah,
the background.
Yeah,
right, the sort of weird dome arch thing.
yeah, because like the future.
Every
had
single
so-
line has a slight different rate of scrolling, but they still get it to all line up. That is fantastic. That is really difficult to do.
I mean, it's very, again, like these stages are just strange. Because although they tie thematically maybe into some of the levels, they still feel like
Yeah.
completely different to other.
Like if you go back to the very first special stage, you've got that sort of diamond pattern that looks a little bit like Quartz Quadrant, the level that we just came in from. But at the same time, the sky keeps changing colors in a way that more resembles like the special stages from Sonic 1 with their constantly changing tessellating patterns in the background, I want to say. Oh, that's a terrible way to end it.
Sonic's
Surprised
face
I keep
down on the
trying
app.
these.
I mean, they're really fun, I think, even if they're hard to get right.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a shame that Sega wasn't able to sort of take another crack at that specific style of stage, because they went with a different direction with 3, where they kind
Somewhat
of,
more realistic, I'd say.
well, yeah, like
That'd be a good way to put it.
well,
Oh yeah,
like
it's halfway between realistic and like hardcore CGI rendering.
I do like this.
I don't think it's as
3 ones,
expressive.
but you know,
This is a great boss. I actually really like the idea for this
yes.
boss.
a lot of this
Feels like very much. Oh,
I was just gonna say, a lot of this stuff feels like, you know, they could do this stuff because they had slightly more Sega CD power.
yeah, like all of these levels are just huge because they could theoretically make every stage about as big as the entire original Sonic 1, if you include like all of the code for the enemies and stuff like that. But yeah, they had a lot of space to work with, and so, you know, that's why there are 4 copies of every stage, I'm sure, because it's a great way to increase, if not replayability exactly, then add variety without having to come up with a million original ideas. because this game, like this is some this really is sort of like a Nintendo R&D1 level of just we're going to throw as much stuff as we can into this game and see what happens sometimes.
Yeah,
like there are a whole bunch of ideas that you see only once or twice, like in maybe a single stage, and it feels like almost underused the way those sorts of games tend to do.
Because what I think, and I was going to bring this up, and I think I'll bring it up now that you've mentioned it. The interesting thing about Sega CD as a whole, it's not Sega CD, Sonic CD as a whole, but also because it's on the Sega CD, is lots of Sega CD games, and most CD games in general, there was this period of time where everyone thought that games were going to become enormous, because now they had, instead of like 8 meg or whatever of cart space, they now had...
The Dragon Quest VII effect.
Yeah. They thought that now they would have 600 meg of game, so there was this idea that they would...
500 hours of RPG action.
like, they were going to be infinitely huge,
yeah.
And I think this game specifically kind of feels like it's trying to fulfill that specific thought, because it's just got so much stuff in it.
Right.
It's got all this, so much extra sprite art compared to a normal Sonic game, all this extra music, all this extra game, all, like, the special stages are completely different, and it's all because, like, they had more storage space, so they went and they tried to use it, or at least look like they were using it.
It's sort of funny how there are a bunch of ideas that sort of feel like, if I wouldn't say fulfilled in Chaotix, then expanded upon in Chaotix, so if this is extra, then I guess that's double mint.
The problem with Chaotix is there's not much actual game to that one when you actually get into it.
Yeah, I feel like the majority of what makes Chaotix interesting comes in, of all things, its special stages. That's probably the best part of that game for me.
Well,
It's a
Chaotix
very
really
fleshed
shot
out
itself
tech
in the
demo,
foot.
that's about it.
Yeah. It's too fast for its own good sometimes.
Is Chaotix better with 2 players? I've literally never played it with 2
No.
players.
No, it's...
No.
And I'm assuming it's
broken.
not, yeah, because you...
Unplayable, basically.
like...
You lose the ability to use the hold button, so all of this stuff where you need to have one character stay in place in order to gain momentum to get speed doesn't work at all.
So it
becomes a tug of war with the faster player winning.
Wow. That's,
It's...
well done.
Yeah, it is.
It's interesting that they did that, because they seem like they would have built it for 2 players, but they clearly did not.
Now, if you could have used the hold button to hold yourself in place,
yeah,
then so many of those problems would have been fixed, and it's such an easy thing to do that I can't believe they didn't.
Maybe one day we'll see it. Bob, you were wanting to talk about something, I think.
This is, maybe not my favorite level, but one of the ones I think is most interesting, and kind of shows off in the most how this game tends to work with its verticality.
This stage,
yeah. The floors are all bouncy. I like to think of it as the floor is lava, because I see this level as being the closest thing we're getting to the old Marble Zone. Like, none of the floors are particularly safe. Most of your time spent going through the level is trying to run across conveyances that are being moved by other stuff, the way the bricks move through the lava in Marble. And it's also very purple, and it feels very indoors. The only difference is that this is sort of like a technological space, where Marble was extremely old. And see here, the sort of wall crushers, it sort of feel like a throwback to Marble-style design, which had a bunch of those sorts of things in it.
But it's very vertical, very focused on exploration, especially getting enough height to see what's at the top level.
Right, there is a lot going on in these levels, and it's... especially because you get thrown up from the ground so quickly, it can be really hard to navigate if you're trying to go for a good time.
It's a fun level, though, because there's lots of gimmicks.
For a good time, call Amy Rose.
There's a lot of toys, though, or gimmicks, or what you would call them, and I can appreciate that.
Well, because...
a lot of stuff that's fun to play with.
You're kind of jumping around what I'm gonna say, which is, right now, obviously, this stage is hugely reminding me of, Carnival Zone. Like...
Oh, that too, yeah. I mean, there's a lot more sort of everything is pushing you around gimmick in there. Like, it's sort of funny that, like, half of the ideas of Marble Zone seem spread out between this and Collision Chaos, when both of them sort of feel like the more modern Sonic pinball level.
And
taken together.
obviously, all these Sonic games are better than Spinball. Unfortunately, they always seem to do Spinball better than Spinball ended up doing. It's a shame.
Well, Spinball could never really figure out how much it wanted to commit to the pinball gimmick, I think is its sin.
I will say
I
Spinball
like the
is
game.
more interesting than Sonic Pinball Party. Maybe not better, but more interesting.
I think most of us.
I think so. I think it works more as a Sonic
because
game.
it's an interesting thing, but they definitely botched it up in places. Probably because I think it would have been rushed since they were really trying to get that extra Sonic game out.
Yeah. Yeah, the way Sonic controls, he feels too loose for platforming, and just a little bit too sharp for pinball.
Yeah.
Like he either has too much or too little control, and the game never really manages to balance it out well. Especially in the places where you don't do pinball stuff and you're doing almost more normal platforming. It never really feels natural, despite that being Sonic's expertise. If they'd gotten the regular platforming physics down, I think the pinball bits would have felt a lot more natural.
Definitely.
But instead they didn't, so everything winds up being at least a little bit weird.
So what's cool about what we're doing here, we've sort of gone through 3 separate palettes for this stage, and they're all kind of, like, superb palettes.
Yeah, God.
Like,
just the sort of rusted feeling going on over everything.
Like, it's impressive that you've basically got an entire game's worth of quality palette in one set of stages. This game.
Yeah.
They've really made, again, this game, because as you said, there is a color limit on the Mega Drive, and the Sega CD, I believe, has the exact same color limit.
Yes, it's exactly the same. There's no fancy extra graphics hardware, except for a 3D chip of sorts. Not even 3D, it's more like sort of along the lines of what Nintendo does, what they call Mode 7, where it's just like a distortion effect that can be applied to textures that are in the Sega CD's memory. But then it has to pass it forward into the Genesis VRAM rather than getting displayed directly on screen. So that's one of the reasons why the special stages in this game are just so unfortunately laggy.
Yes,
because they have that extra layer that they have to pass through rather than just, we're going to scale this effect and then put it on the screen and it'll be nice and smooth looking and everyone will love it.
If I remember correctly, that was a direct result of Sega cheaping out on the original Mega Drive, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. They could have had, like, video pass-throughs on either the expansion port the Sega CD plugged into or on the cartridge itself, but they just never did. So they were sort of stuck with what was already the weakest part of the Genesis, never really being able to get upgraded. And the audio on the Genesis people complain about, but it was really easy to extend that because the cartridge had an audio pass-through. The 32X used it. Obviously, the Sega CD was able to generate its own sound, but they just never were able to get anywhere with the graphics. It's probably possible that they could have designed the Sega CD in a way that, more like the 32X, was able to sort of display its own graphics directly. But there's still that price issue going on, where the 32X even didn't have the graphic hardware that it really should have for what it was trying to do. Such that all you had was, like, a frame buffer. That's it, just a block of memory that would eventually get passed to the screen, rather than any sort of real graphics hardware.
Yeah.
Despite being, we want to use this thing to put 3D games on the Genesis, presumably being its inspiring force. But I will say, something like Virtua Racing looks as good, if not better than, something like Star Fox on the Super Nintendo. I'm going to go ahead and say that straight out. At the very least, it is smoother.
I mean, we compared them I basically compared them side by side when we did our Star Fox postmortem. And yeah, what was the chip name? VSR, VH.
SNES or Sega CD?
SVR, I think.
Or not SVP on the on Virtua Racing.
Yeah, SVP. Sorry.
I think was what it was called. Yeah.
That chip came out after the Star Fox chip, and it shows because it's actually a better chip.
Yeah.
The Star Fox 2 chip beats it, but again, it came out after, so it's kind of back.
I mean, it helps that the Genesis was already a lot faster, so the sort of graphical lag that you were getting, like on Star Fox, I remember, I think Steve Snake saying, oh, I'm looking into the way the SVP chip works, and they probably could have made Virtual Racing and not bothered to use it.
Well, I mean, Virtual Racing, part of their plan was to use it like as an expandable 32X thing.
Yeah. Right, sort of a proof of concept for the 32X
but
to see what,
they chickened out, and that probably really damaged them in the long run.
Because it was a very expensive cart, wasn't it?
It was
it was like $100, and then the 32X never really got the support it needed to catch on. So,
but if they had have done a couple of expensive carts and then had a bunch of lock-ins, it probably would have tided them over better than screwing everyone over with the 32.
Yeah,
I think Sega could have gotten away with the CD or the 32X, but not both.
Oh, I think I've always read that the Sega CD did fine. Like, nothing...
It did... It's probably the single best console expansion for what that's worth. Maybe not a whole lot, but it is a good piece of hardware, if not great. Like, it certainly beats the Jaguar.
Like the Jaguar CD.
Oh, God. I mean, the Turbo CD was pretty good as well, and it had that nice advantage of not having the problems of the color limit that the Sega CD had. So what few games had like video in it tended to look a little bit better, I want to say, but I haven't played too many of those games either. So like the only example I can really point to is Dracula X on there, whose animated sequences were pretty sparse. Just mostly mouse moving over static pictures.
I can't think of many terribly good games of Turbo CD except Rondo Blood.
Yeah,
I believe
that's like the one I've played. So.
Todd's Adventure in Slime World got a port, didn't it, to the CD?
I mean, you could play the exclusive Addams Family game. That's something.
Everyone likes Morticia.
I want to say though
that
I do love the stage a lot, and it's a lot more speed-based than a lot of the
I was hoping to get into this stage. Yeah.
It's very Starlight.
Man, yeah. It's extremely, even more so. Yeah. It's sort of surprising that most of the time you can listen to a zone's music and point to bits here and there that feel like they were built out of the motifs from the original Sonic 1 music. At least in the Japanese version, but this is the only one, and probably because it was basically licensed from Dreams Come True, where you can't listen to Starlight Zone's theme anywhere in here, and instead it sounds a little bit more like Aretha Franklin's cover of Everyday People. Which was, sort of modern at the time, and a very good song in its own right, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm not surprised that they went for something along with that style.
I do like that this stage also, you don't see it as much in what we're on at the moment because it's the past, but in the present, it has trumpets on the stage.
Oh, yeah.
Like, who built this? Like, there's no, like, a lot of Sonic stages tend to lean, I won't say realism, but towards, like, this is a natural formation, or Robotnik built it because it's a giant machine. Whereas this...
Yeah, there's a degree of, like, plausible space that shows up in most Sonic games. Like, they don't feel like just that they're sort of a contrived video game space. They also feel like they could be something that physically exists in a real world, even if not necessarily ours. But here, everything feels extremely contrived and sort of weirdly laid out. And I can definitely say, confidently, that a lot of the sort of weirdness in the level layout is for things like when you're doing time attack. If you're finding the correct routes, then a lot of the weirdness in the game starts making a lot more sense. Like the way parts of the game all sort of fit together.
And I guess I'll point out again,
you look at it.
Because we're I don't want to interrupt you. I was just gonna say that they've gone with purple and gold, and now it's transitioned to a completely different color
This is a great
as well.
set piece right here. I love this.
Oh yeah, the giant climb up the Robotnik statue.
This is probably the only tangible part of this whole stage set. Like it's a place. It has a landmark. Because
it gets referenced in the ending too.
So I mean, like, is that the plot of this stage? Did Robotnik build a giant music machine for his own giant statue of himself? Because that's pretty ballsy even for him,
Yeah.
I will mention this because I'm pretty sure it'll happen. The background is probably going to get eaten by YouTube. I don't know how well it's gonna
It looks okay to me, actually.
But it is crisper in the if you play the game. It's like a very crisp background.
Yeah, there's so much detail going on in it. It's very dramatic and really bright. And I like how in the bad future it's like actually stormy.
Well, I believe we're gonna see the bad future now, so.
Yep, we
I was
will.
close to getting the good future here, but...
I think the bad futures are somewhat more interesting visually, because you get to... Most of the good futures are just kind of like everything's happy and it's plantish, right? Like there's usually... Like,
and blue.
Yeah. It's blue, there's plants, it's like that's the good future.
Yeah. It's techno-utopian and doesn't feel like quite as much of a leap from the original style of the stage to it. I don't always exactly like the good futures in the sense that, oh, this is where I want to spend my time, but they are like really fascinating visually just because of how much of a leap thing.
So this boss fight is kind of annoying. Is the best way I can describe this boss fight. Because
the rules for it are a little inconsistent. You almost want to stay behind Supersonic or Metal Sonic.
Yeah, it's very easy for him to rubber band you.
Yeah, he constantly does that. When he's behind you, when he does that rev up thing, he'll do that yellow flash that you see, which causes him to move really fast, get ahead of you, and do damage. When he's in front of you, he doesn't go as fast and just sort of keeps his same pace, but turns like red instead. So
he does.
You can see that you do get a lot of leeway.
Him, but he's easier to chase.
I fell behind like 3 times. I still managed to get through.
Yeah.
Well, because you are.
Yeah, you can't really stay consistently in front of him.
At the end, basically.
Yeah, it feels better to sort of lag behind and beat him right at the end.
So Bob got an achievement for what I assume is he doesn't get hugged at the start of the game, I guess? Is that
yeah, it was in the past. Amy's not there.
Yeah, she shows up in the Act 1 present, one of many, many scripted events that only occur in the present of a stage.
So this stage, I guess I'll say straight up, I don't know if the background and color is as successful in this stage as it has been in previous ones. This feels a bit more kind of, they've thrown a lot of color and garbage into the game. Like it's
the background is a lot harder to parse because it's got lots of sharp contrast. It doesn't look bad exactly, but it doesn't look as clear. Yeah. Like it doesn't really behave according to the rules established for backgrounds up until this point. These are like green pipes that I guess glow red from the background underneath rather than as a result of like shading or something.
Yeah, but then there's like purple pipes there that don't get affected by it.
Yeah.
So this stage also, is this, Scrapyard, Scrap Brain, whatever, like, is that...
Yeah, very much. There are some very obvious references to Scrap Brain in here. The one that, in addition to these pistons, which basically showed up there almost with the exact same art as I recall. You know, you've got the platforms that show up in and out. Oh, right there.
Yeah.
Those are pretty much straight from Scrap Brain as well. The platforms that run on tracks and flip around, as we're seeing here. Hey, it's a wonderful guided tour of everything that this level carries over from Scrap Brain.
Yeah, this is a real asshole of a set piece.
It's still less annoying than anything in Scrap Brain, which is just a level that constantly wants to see you dead. I feel like they were making it fairer under the assumption that, you know, with the save feature that exists in all versions of this game, there's no way that you're eventually not going to beat it.
Well, this game is also more about sort of earning the good ending, I guess.
Yeah, that too. It's not hard to beat, but you have to do that exploration if you want the good ending, or practice the special stages a lot.
And that takes a lot more time.
And you do have to explore it. It's not like most other Sonic games. You can fudge the good ending by just hitting the checkpoint things to get the emeralds, or in Sonic 1's case, all you have to do is finish the stage with 50 rings. That's all you have to do to get the good ending.
Yeah. Like, to get into the past, you have to understand how the levels work, really.
Oh, I love this thing. Oh, I
Well,
love
there's
that.
a lot of things you can point at to say, oh yeah, these are from Scrap Brain as well. Almost exactly the sort of running tracks. You
I just
see
had
them
to stay on
even
that
show
for a
up in
little
the
bit. I love that
credits.
thing.
Also, the background has
they're
become
so much fun.
a lot better. I think that this is a lot more successful.
Yeah, this is a different background, and I didn't really realize it at the time, but yeah. Like, that's one of the nice things about having each level basically be its own separate game, which you sort of have to do because of the way the Sega CD works. With maybe a few common elements stored separately, like the code for Sonic and his art. You might load that at the start of the game. Like, every single level, you can load new art, new enemies, new objects. And, you know, you're limited basically by like 700 megabytes on a disc, which dwarfs the size of the original Sonic 1 by a factor of well over 100. You can fit over 100 copies of Sonic 1 on a single disc. So when each level is almost the size of Sonic 1, there's so much unique stuff you can do every time.
So, nice Robotnik heads. The walls here.
You know, I didn't even notice those before until you pointed that out.
He puts his head in everything.
Yeah, there's just
It's
so much
great.
detail. There's so much detail going on in this game.
And
it's amazing.
Interestingly, like, we've got these transport tubes, which I guess are from Scrap Brain and from Sonic 2 as well. They both...
Yeah, they remind me the most of the ones in Death Egg Zone from Sonic 3, though, because you have that bit in the middle where you have to choose which direction you want to go in.
And these...
Oh, and as a fun tip for speedrunners, the little pistons here, they work sort of like springs, but not quite. If you launch a peel out at this exact moment as they're about to move up, you can launch your way over the top of this next part of the level and just cheese your way to the end.
I didn't know
Skipping
that
over
was.
all of this.
Would you... Now,
Well,
do you think that was intentional? Because I know some things tend to be intentional for speedrunners. That doesn't seem like that would have been...
It's hard to say when it comes to the way the end level checkpoints work. Is that once you've gotten just far enough right in the level, no matter what height you are, you'll trigger it. And Sonic CD is certainly no different. You know, you get far enough right, even if you're basically flying over the entire stage, you can do that. I don't know if the developers were aware of this, however. I have, if you look at least on the original Sega CD and PC ports of the game, let me see if I can find it. I should have it. Here we go. The best times for Stage 7-2. The best was 2 minutes and 8 seconds.
Damn.
From the developers.
I just want
which
to... Sorry.
is maybe a little bit high if they weren't aware of the ability to skip over the stage like that.
I just want to
So it may
say,
not
though,
have been intentional. Oh, sorry. Go.
I love from after the last zone and how fast it is. You got this very methodical, very set-piece focused level full of obstacles you have to deal with one at a
Tiny
time.
Sonic. This is... this is, again...
This is so weird, but yeah,
It's so out
great
of there
at the same time.
And also, I believe this is like very much an element of the Sega CD. Like, we have enough space to fit an entire tiny Sonic in.
Yeah.
Like, wow. This is so unexpected as well because it doesn't even like sit anywhere. It's literally feels like someone on the team was like, let's make Sonic tiny. Like, that's it. Like, that's the pitch for this bit. Because there's no reason for it.
It's one of those things that sort of makes it feel like it's very much borrowed from those weird multimedia PC games of the... Oh,
Wrong way.
you went the wrong way. But
Go
yeah,
me.
sort of like one of those weird things you'd see on one of those PC DOS era games at the time. Just sort of like, well, can we do this? You know,
Yeah.
Sure, we may as well build something out of it. We're just going to be tiny in this level. The same sort of ideas that influence, like, you know, Shiny's Earthworm Jim 2, where there's a level where you're a floating blind cave salamander and a level filled with, like, villi.
I mean, that was, you know,
Literally.
Earthworm Jim is brilliant for that sort of just
Yeah.
stuff.
Like, this is about as close as Sonic gets to to touching that same sort of Earthworm Jim shiny. We're just going to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks kind of game design.
What I really like about this stage too, and you'll probably notice, if you're not like up to key on how to beat this stage, you actually do have the risk of running out of time. I feel like this is a big stage.
Yeah. And there's so much stuff that slows you down, like this right here.
Like, it's very rare for a Sonic game
wait
to upwardly actually push that time limit, but I think this is one of the few stages that does it.
Yeah, this and like Carnival Night. And
I've always felt Carnival Night
maybe Metropolis.
Carnival Night pushes it because of the barrel. Like, you know.
Oh yeah, no one knows how to get through that normally, so it's a lot of trial and error. But even then, it's still one of the longest stages in Sonic 3, even with Sonic and Knuckles as part of it.
So I guess I'll talk about this just before Bob jumps in. The way that the spinners in the ground spin, some of them have like blurring on them to make them look like they're spinning super fast, and I think that's like a really cool effect. So Bob, about the stage?
I just want to say this is like the only boss stage that has like the actual risk of death, and that's kind of interesting. It's like almost like a stage of its own.
Right, because you have to fight your way
generally
to the boss.
the boss encounters in the stage are usually preceded by almost a superficial amount of level.
Oh,
to the point
yeah,
where,
that's my one death of the run. Like the only bottomless pit in the entire game. Only one.
Yeah, spoilers, Bob doesn't die again, I guess.
It's easy to get screwed up there. Now, one of the nice things about the earlier versions of the game, before this PC port came out, is that you can actually sort of wait, like right at the end where the piston is. You can sort of just barely hold on to that tiny little stretch of land. But in this version you can't, which makes it a lot harder. As you can see, if we were doing this on the PC version, when Bob had jumped at it, he would have been able to just sort of hang on to the ledge. Just barely. Sonic would do his little falling pose, but you'd be able to wait for the thing to come up. Bakes a little bit of forgiveness into that bit and makes it a lot less painful. But again, this is the end of the game, and
yeah,
especially in the PC version, the 2011 version, I mean,
pretty
progress
generous.
is saved after every stage. So if you get this far,
you're fine.
It really doesn't matter how many lives you have or if you keep dying, because you will be able to respawn right where you left off.
So
Act 3s never have checkpoints.
I love how in this game all the badniks are bugs. Like, everything is. I love that kind of theming going on.
Well, I mean, you've got the badniks are bugs, and then when you kill them, flowers come out. Like, that's really interesting visually sort of metaphor. I will basically mention this very briefly. I don't think Bob hit it, but that bit where he spun to a different side of the wall, that is not exclusive to this bit. I think we missed that bit in the previous stage, but it exists in the stage before this one as well, I think. And I don't think we got it.
Final Boss is an interesting concept, but he's really easy because they give you rings, unlike the previous two games.
Yeah, like we mentioned earlier, like they generally skimp out on the ring. And for this one, they give you ring.
It does almost seem like there was an idea of having a more elaborate final boss after this stage if you'd gotten all of the time stones or good futures.
We discussed that. They were going to do that for the remaster, but the SEGA said no.
Well, it seems
but
like
I mean,
they
even
might
for
have,
the original version of the game.
It feels like they would have done
Final
something.
Fever.
Because, what's the name? Sonic 2 doesn't do it. Obviously 3 does it. It's the first one that, well, Knuckles, 3 and Knuckles.
Yeah, Death Egg Zone in technically Sonic and Knuckles.
Yeah, so that's really.
I like to think of Sonic 3 as a single game though. So.
And Bob got another achievement. He finished this version, I guess.
As a note, you can't get all of the achievements in this game without beating the game twice.
That's not too surprising though.
Yeah, because there's one achievement for getting all of the Metal Sonic figures and the Good Future Robot machines, and then there's another one where you get all the time stones. But if you get all the time stones, then you automatically get Good Futures in all of the levels after that point.
That makes sense.
So it's not actually an issue.
So
that said, I have. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna talk about Sonic blowing up planets and stuff here.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't really mention that this game is actually, I mean, it's implied, but it's not set on Earth or Mobius or nondescript Sonic where he lives. It's set on Little Planet, or whatever it's called.
And I'm pretty sure Robotnik just is dead now.
I love that he explodes into a Robotnik face. Like, of course he does. That's branding. That's criminal branding.
We're blasting off again!
You gotta sell the brand.
Also, this animation is still gorgeous.
Yeah. It's a shame it doesn't look this good on the Sega CD. Oh,
this
yeah.
was going to be the
Deleted
ruin
level
stage
concept.
that...
Well, right there, that would have been the Marble Hill equivalent, almost certainly, right?
Probably, yeah.
I find it so interesting that
It's
they
weird 'cause-
animated all of this stuff, and then it's just in the credits sequence?
Yeah, it was very unusual for me, especially at the time, because I didn't really sort of understand the separation between, like, once the sort of level montage kicks in, and the bit before that, which is sort of like Sonic escapes from the giant Eggman statue with Amy and then goes after Robotnik one last time, or witnesses Little Planet morph away in the slightly better ending.
But yeah, like, this is interesting, because it's almost like concept animation for the stages, which I don't think it's supposed to be, but it comes out like that. Like, I don't know, like, I would have loved to see a Sonic, you know, anything that was just this animation for, like, 30 minutes, or whatever, like. It's a huge shame that they never actually went with something like this. I mean, it would have been expensive, I guess, but it's really gorgeous.
I mean, the OVA has its bits that do sort of resemble this. It was by a different studio, but it's hard not to think of one as heavily influencing the other. Like, the Ruin area sort of feels like that same sort of specifically metropolitan ruins that make up the Land of Darkness, as it was called in that series.
Yeah, and I think they both look like they're inspired again by the Laputa sort of ruin style.
Yeah.
Which seem to have inspired every
Definitely.
Japanese creative.
For more on Laputa influencing Sonic, also check out Sky Sanctuary Zone from Sonic & Knuckles.
That's why I feel so confident, like, referencing Laputa and Sonic, because it's just like, there's clearly that the team loved that movie, and or at least someone did.
I mean, someone must have. I mean, I would not be surprised if Oshima was like a big fan of a whole bunch of Miyazaki and Ghibli stuff. Because it's hard not to also look at Eggman and think, you know, oh, this is that same old mechanically influenced dude who's always building robots in every single one of these films, you know, whether it's something sort of Porco Rosso and his flying machine sort of thing, or the dude in the steam room with the giant sort of pump organ kind of thing going on.
Okay, and so, also, now that we've finished the game, Bob really wanted to show off Tails and also getting a good future. Because as he said, he wants to prove that he's not terrible at this game. And he finished it with 1 death, so I don't think he needed to, but whatever. Here we are. It's this is exclusive to the 2011 PC port. Sorry, I shouldn't even say... Yeah, it is a port.
Well, it was on the
mobile
XBLA
PC,
and
I guess, yeah. Like, all of your favorite digital methods of game distribution, you can probably find this game on it.
Tails plays pretty much exactly this in Sonic 3. He can fly, just like Sonic 3.
Just like Tails
Which really
in Sonic
helps
3.
with feud levels.
Sonic 3 doesn't fly. I don't know what Sonic 3 does. Well, I guess you throw it.
You could mount it to one of those quadcopter drones.
You could grab a drone and you could fly it, and then someone shoot it down and steal your copy of Sonic 3. Yeah, so you get to play as Tails. What music is Tails use? Any different sound effects?
I decided to go with the Japanese
flying
soundtrack on this playthrough, just to compare.
Now, I don't know if this is the recording we have. Yeah, no, it looks like his tails do spin. Sorry, the frame rate was messing my eyes up a bit.
It's literally once every frame, so if you're just looking at a 30 frame per second YouTube video, you're not going to see it, but all of his animations are there, like 100%. They just don't always show up properly when brought down by the frame FPS reduction.
So something interesting here, I guess we didn't mention it, is that the clouds in the background of the stage scroll independently of themselves right now. They're not, like, they don't scroll when you move. They're actually on their own, like, scrolling layer that just sort of does its own thing.
Yep, if you played the US version or European version of Sonic 1, that's probably surprising. If you've played the Japanese version, then that may not seem quite as earth-shattering a revelation to you, just because that was where it showed up first, I want to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also,
This whole segment here, like right at the beginning with the branching paths and speed shoes and like multiple ways of going, just reminds me so much of Act 3 of the original Green Hill Zone, because it had a similar amount of branching paths. Like that level, compared to the first two stages at least, was absolutely gigantic.
well, it was basically
It had
opening
like
the game
4 or
up.
5 ways. Yeah, it was like the first time where they really take off the training wheels and say, you know, it's your turn to fool around and see what you can come up.
So, I guess we didn't really mention this, but I think the invincibility music is unique to this game.
Right, yeah.
Cause, like, I think Sonic 1 uses the same... Does it use the same invincibility music as, ones after? I can't quite remember.
Yes. Sonic 1 and 2 used the same one. The invincibility here was technically sort of reused for I almost hesitate to say this, but I think Sonic Drift, the original one,
Right.
used invincibility music that was very heavily based on the music from the Japanese version of this game.
And
this is also the only one that has speed shoes music, because when you're doing music off of a CD, you can't just say, okay, now play the CD twice as fast.
yeah, because it's obviously only this one uses CD music, so that's interesting.
Yep.
Also, you don't want to spin the Sega CD very fast, because that would be a very bad idea.
Right.
That thing does not have a lot of, stability. I wanted to say, what are the load times like on the Sega CD version? Does anyone remember?
I've played it on my XI, which, as near as I can tell, does have a slightly faster drive than other versions of the Sega CD. So the load times on that they're present, but they're not particularly dramatic. When I played the old Windows 95 version, it would be, I want to say, maybe half of a minute for a stage to load. But they also had a nice, unique background.
This might be me.
I mean,
Yeah, well,
it would depend on
I
your
think it was
PC
also
at
because
that
our computer wasn't super fancy either, so...
It was interesting that
Hey,
Tails,
there's-
kills enemies with his tail from underneath in this one, does he?
It's always been like that, I'm pretty sure.
He can do that in Sonic 3 as well, but the hitbox isn't always very well defined.
Because, yeah, like, obviously Sonic, jumps, but Tail can actually fly up.
In Sonic 3, like, there was the boss of Marble Garden Zone where you had to use that
So-
as the method of defeating him.
You just skipped
So
the
I could
special
never beat him as a
stage.
kid.
Because, I don't know, you're a jackass. Tails gets his own graphic for the special stage, does he?
Yes, he does.
Is it the one
This
from-
is the good future. This is what you're trying to strive for.
Man, I love that yay! Like, yay!
Yeah.
So,
Yay!
so ridiculous.
Yeah, 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 yeah!
Yeah, so good futures. I mean, they're very nice. They're very relaxing.
Techno-utopian with those trees, like, they look sort of artificial.
Okay, watch this.
Yep.
And then
The fast kill.
Robotnik comes in with, like, his pink car. It's so great. Because obviously they switched the primary red to pink. So we're going to run out of time on the playthrough shortly, so... thanks for joining us. This has been great, I think.
Yep.
Like,
Oh, yeah. I had a lot of fun.
yeah, there we go.
Same rules.
Off into infinity. That's gone. So... yeah, thank you for joining us, Muteki. Thank you, Bob, for recording that. I mean, I'd be happy to talk about the other Sonic games at some point. I don't know if anyone wants us to talk about all the Sonic games, because they're kind of well traversed. But, yeah,
I would love to talk about those some
if people are interested, I think it'd be really cool, especially to do the Master System ones, because those ones don't have much representation around.